Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is a Bade Modern Designs Wolverine prototype knife. First off, though, in the name of full disclosure, this little knife was sent along. It's a prototype that was sent along to me by the maker. Wanted me to check it out, have a little look-see, and I figured, you know what, it's really nice, so I just actually throw up a video about it. So anyways, there you go, and I did get permission to show the prototype off. That's thing. But anyways, so first off, though, we need to keep in mind that this is probably one of the best quality controlled ones literally ever, because this is a prototype that We Knives sent him. And second of all, I'm doing my best not to let that affect my review. And speaking of the review, this is actually going to be sort of a quick review because this is a prototype. There will be changes, and so please don't take this as being the final verdict on anything like this. I mean, I'm going to give my conclusions, but they're based on this proto. It could be that the final version is a lot better, a lot worse. I really don't know. I assume it's just going to be better, but, you know, nevertheless, that's what's going on here. Next thing, let's do a size comparison right quick. This is actually not a large knife, but it is a little bit on the bigger side. Here we go. This is the Ontario Rat number 2. This is the Ontario Rat number 1, and so you can see this comes in right around that same vicinity here. And in terms of blade length-wise, we're coming in right under, in terms of blade length-wise, nice. We're coming in right at about 3.25 inches worth of blade here. And so, yeah, there's that. And then, of course, the Spyderco Delica. How could I possibly resist doing that? And then actually folded up. This guy is, you know, a little bit on the bigger side as well. If we compare it here in the folded size to Delica, it's not too bad, but thickness-wise, yeah, it's substantially thicker. So, there you go. Next thing, this is a prototype, and this is actually, the knife itself is being produced, or if it is produced, it will be produced by We Knives, but this is a proto straight from them, and this knife is actually, they're doing something a little bit different, or that is, the maker's doing something a little different, that he's doing an IndieGoGo. Basically, this is a crowdfunding platform where a bunch of people can say, yeah, I want to get one of these guys, and plunk down the amount of money for to buy one of these knives, and only if he reaches a certain goal will the knife be made, and this actually makes a lot of sense, because buying a run of knives off of a company like We is not cheap, and to the best of my knowledge, they don't work on credit. It's not like, oh, well, you know, send me the knives, then I'll send you the money. I don't think that's how things work, and so I wouldn't be shocked if we don't see more of this more often, and honestly, I don't think it's a really bad idea. Presumably, you know, of course, you know there's going to be risk. It's possible that you'll plunk down and something may never come of it, but the thing is, I think the idea of doing crowdfunding for new knife designs is a good idea, because what it basically means is that if enough people love it, it'll happen. If no one's interested, it's back to the drawing board for the maker. And this could actually be one of those solutions to knives being built more and more without a why. If people had to actively kind of put their money where their mouth is just to make it exist, that's kind of a nice thing. That's neither here nor there, but that's a little bit different, and that's the way that you would get one of these guys. If you're really interested, you would go down and do that IndieGoGo thing. Again, I can't vouch for the guy. The IndieGoGo thing, that's its own little affair, but that's the approach that they're taking there. And then finally, I should disclose, because I'm able to, that I did a stealth review of this design from drawings way back when, and so although I didn't change all that much, and the maker has changed on his own a whole lot more than I did, I did have the role in maybe knocking a couple of uglies out of there here and there. So anyways, let's go ahead and talk about what's looking pretty good about this little prototype, what's not looking so good, and then I'll give my my final thoughts here. So on the good side, to start with, this is a We knife. I mean, it's being made by We. It's not a We knife, it's a Bade Modern Designs knife, but you get what I'm saying, though. But that means that the finishing and the machining is good to freaking go. I mean, you can see here these little cutouts, which, by the way, Wolverine scratches. Rawr. But that's kind of nice. And just overall, all of the edges are well chamfered. Everything is pretty well done. Centering is dead freaking on. I mean, if the production versions look like this prototype, even the inlay work is pretty damn solid. This is just a well-made knife. I mean, We Knives makes good knives, and so yeah, that's an excellent thing. And the inlays themselves actually look pretty cool. And I think the inlays are a good idea. It looks like, I'm not sure if this looks like carbon fiber or some variety or another, but the simple fact is that it makes a lot of sense, because there is a stop pin under there, and the inlays are what are keeping that stop pin from coming out. On other integral knives, you need to put the stop pin in and then kind of like grind things away like they've done on the Spyderco Nirvana, which is another integral. It's nice that they've used the carbon fiber here to cover that up. And by the way, a quick note, what is actually an integral knife? Because that's one of the big features of this guy, although what an integral knife means is that there is just one chunk of metal that makes up the handle of this guy. The handle has basically been milled out. They've cut out a groove for the blade to go into. They've drilled a hole for the pivot there, and then they've cut the lock bar in there and bent the lock bar in place and actually put a lock bar insert into it from the looks of it here. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And the machining is very different on it. It lends these guys a feeling of solidity that is quite nice. And so that's what an integral is, and this is absolutely one of them. And that actually could count as being one of the good things. For a lot of folks, that's some prestige, and so seeing this guy as an integral is pretty good. Next thing, the ergos on this guy are actually pretty solid. The clip is maybe a little hot spotty if you're down here, but if you choke up, it's actually really good to go. And this is pretty well designed. I mean, in this kind of classical saber grip, this works pretty well. And in the hammer grip, especially if you choke up a little bit, if your finger fits well in the sharpening choil there, it works pretty well. And if you're in a hammer grip, this works pretty good too. Reverse grip, I guess you could do. That might be a hand size issue for me. I don't know. But either way, the ergos are doing pretty good all around. Clip on this guy is pretty good to go. You can see here it's nice and thin, it's long, you've got a lot of ramp in there. Clip was pretty much transparent every time I used it, which is no complaints there. Sorry lefties, though, you can't flip it around. Next thing, this guy is, actually, you have two options. You can either flip the knife using the flipper tab, which, by the way, is not super pocket peckery. You can see here that because of the way that the knife is going to hang in the pocket, this flipper tab isn't going to be attacking what else is in your pocket, which is a good thing, but it also flicks out using this blade hole. You can pop this guy out pretty readily and pretty reliably, which I really do appreciate. So you've got that, and you've got a great action all around. I mean, the detent is nice and strong. It's a Wee Knives action, and so you get reliable deployment. You get a really nice, pleasant deploy. It's not the false shuttiest thing ever, but at the same time, this one may be a little bit dirty. Who knows? But yeah, so there's that going on. Next thing, the blade on this guy is solid. You can see right here, if I can focus in, that does in fact say M390. It's a little bit small, but trust me, I took out the loop, it's M390. But that's actually a beautiful thing, because M390 is a really solid steel. Well, all steels are solids, but you know what I mean. It's a really good steel, and so I fully support them using it here. And it's kind of a step up from the S35 VN that a lot of folks are putting in mid-techs these days. I'm not complaining about S35 VN, but I'm just saying that's going an extra mile. It is also ground reasonably thinly. Is it the thinnest thing we has ever ground? No, absolutely not. But you can see here the saber grind is only coming partway up the blade. No shock there. But at the same time, it does cut. It is reasonable. It works pretty well. So that's nice. And it's got this big old sharpening / finger choil there, which is also nice. It'll make it real easy to sharpen. And for those of us with smaller hands, it's easy to choke up for detail work. So that's good. Then finally, on the good side, probably the best thing this has going for it by a mile is the price. This is a full-on integral knife made of titanium and M390 with a carbon fiber inlay. They want $279 for this, at least in the IndieGoGo thing. If you're gonna do it that way, you're paying $279. And look, that's pretty impressive. I recall a time when an integral knife, no matter what it was, you were paying like $425 or so for one. This is substantially cheaper than that. And that's a really, really nice price for an M390 integral. I mean, that if this guy were more expensive, I'd be a little bit like, but the thing is, that price is right on freaking point. And so, to me, that's what's good here, is that the price is really pretty damn good. I mean, for an integral with M390, yep, doing well. The blade is pretty solid. The action is good, whether you're flipping it or flicking it. You've got a nice subtle flipper tab on there. It has a very nice clip that works very nicely. Good ergos, a nice inlay, and the finishing work and whatnot is just on point because it's a freaking Wee Knife design, or a Wee Knife manufactured knife. On the bad side, there are some things I'm not a big fan of. The two-tone blade is among them. Wee Knives, I like a lot of what they do, but their blade finishes tend to always look a little bit like dirty, and I feel like this is one of them. I mean, they've done a nice satin on the flat of the blade there, but in the grind, they've got some kind of, I don't know if this is a blasting or an acidy something or another. Whatever it is, I'm not a huge fan of it, because it just makes this part of the blade look constantly like, you should clean that off. I don't know. It's purely aesthetic, though. Next thing, this guy is a little bit on the heavy side. We are coming in here at, let me pull out my scale here. coming in at 4.8 ounces. I measured it beforehand, 4.79, I suppose. For 3.25 inches of blade, that's it's a little bit hefty. And actually, the other thing to keep in mind is that this knife is a little bit on the thick side. It's an integral, but we're coming in at like half an inch thick for this whole knife, as opposed to some of the other stuff I have on the channel there, which is, well, that's not super great. And so as a result, this guy carries a little bit heavy. It carries a little bit big. It's a little bit of a beefy little guy. Next thing, when I tried to take this guy apart, the disassembly just didn't happen. I was able to get the pivot out of there and kind of pop it through, but unfortunately there's the stop pin in there, and I wasn't able to lift off either of the carbon fiber plates. Maybe they would just fit too tightly in there. Maybe they'd put adhesive down there mistakenly. Who knows? But as a result, I couldn't get the blade out, and as a result, I couldn't service the bearings or anything. I, popped the pivot back through with some lubrication, etc. But that was a little bit disappointing, and I hope that's not an issue for all of them, because it's a bearing knife. Sooner or later, you'll need to get up in there. Next thing, the finger choil on this guy. Unfortunately, wait, what the heck do I have here? Finger choil needs rounding. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Oh, this little guy right here. Yeah, this little corner right here. This is definitely going to be needing some rounding here, because you've got a little bit of a sharp corner that's right in the finger choil area. Guys, I'm not a brilliant man. It's been a long day already. But that does absolutely need a little bit of rounding in there, just to make life a little bit easier. Then speaking of rounding, the biggest issue I've got with this knife, actually, if the disassembly is just like a one-off bug, is the fact that these back corners here, those are a little bit on the sharp side, and unfortunately those back corners are really important with a flipper knife, in that when you're flipping this guy, what you basically have to do is dig this guy into your palm and then pull backwards, and so each time you're stabbing yourself in the palm with a sharp corner. Now, I did talk to the maker of this guy, and I mentioned that to him, and he said, yeah, absolutely, we're going to fix that in the final version, so hopefully the one you get won't have that issue, but for this one, that's absolutely not a great thing, and if that showed up in the final version, that'd be ugly for sure. So, but that is, to me, the bad, is that the back corners need to be rounded, although the maker assures me that they will. I'd love to see a little bit of rounding on this little area here where the plunge intersects. Just kind of knock that off a little bit, make it a little bit better for finger choiling. The disassembly wasn't able to happen on this guy beyond just popping the pivot out of there. It is a little bit thick, a little bit heavy, and I'm not a big fan of the two-tone blade on this guy. Look, final conclusions on this knife, I mean, not final conclusions, it's a prototype, but at least my conclusions based on the proto here is that this is actually a really nice little piece. I mean, at some level, it's well made, it's well designed. There's really nothing too bad wrong with it. I mean, I'm assuming the disassembly thing's just a quirk of this particular one. That's something they'll need to have fixed. But the thing is, it's nice. There's a lot going on here that's good, and the price on this guy is really impressive. I mean, having this guy here for sale for $279 is really... that's some pretty serious pricing. And so, especially in a world where most of the other titanium integral knives are still running up in the 400 range, that's pretty compelling. Personally, for me, this guy isn't to my necessary taste. I mean, it's thick, it's beefy, it's a little bit heavy, it's black with all sorts of random grooves. I mean, none of those things are a way to my heart. Plus the acid, washy, blasty, whatever the heck blade. None of those things are aesthetically, to my taste, but that is absolutely pure aesthetics. I can acknowledge the knife to be very well made and, frankly, a very nice little design. And so if you like the look of this guy, and if this guy gets funded, that's going to be the big thing. This may never actually reach production. I do think, though, that this little Wolverine could absolutely claw its way into your collection, and if you want to see it happen, head on down to that IndieGoGo thing. I'll probably put a link down in the description there below, and if it's still running, you may be able to get yours that way, or at the very least, you can do your best. So, there you go. I hope this has been interesting to you, and that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of the day, and bye now.